Friends, we have this press meet. This is in connection with the 30th anniversary of the incident that took place, the industrial accident that took place in Bhopal in 1984. And this industrial accident and the tragedy brought to attention to the world a great lesson that if there is no proper safe condition for working, it can cause immense loss to human life, and the suffering can continue for years together. Bhopal lives even today. Conditions of the people continue to live in the minds of workers and the people all over the world. And this industrial accident, the largest accident in the world, attracted attention in many countries, all continents, and we have here a delegation from Scotland representing various sections of the trade unions and working class, and they paid a visit to Bhopal 2-3 days ago, and they have come with their experience what they have done in respect of campaign for Bhopal gas affected people in the past, and also what efforts are going on in UK, in Scotland, etc. And after the visit in Bhopal, they have their own experiences. So today we are here to know their first-hand experience, and we had some exchange of views with them. I am Vasudevan, who is a convener of the Trade Union Solidarity Committee in Mumbai, and we have delegates from Scotland, and there are many of them, but those are sitting here with me to address you. Eric Scanded, Sam McCartney, Kathy Jenkins will address the press. So first I request Eric to speak.
Thank you, friends. I'm delighted to be here to address you as part of the Scottish Trade Union delegation to Bhopal. A bit of history of why we're here. 2 years ago, 2 Bhopal survivors came to Scotland to meet with activists from different sectors. Balkrishna Namdeo, a trade union organizer who was representing the Bhopal Gas Peedit, Neerashrit, Pension Bhogi, Sangarsh Morcha, and Safreen, a second-generation survivor representing Children Against Dow Carbide, both organizations part of the International Campaign for Justice in Bhopal. And these 2 activists met with some trade unionists in Scotland. And they so moved those trade unionists that the Scottish Trade Union Congress resolved to act in solidarity with the survivors' movement for justice. Part of the result of that is this delegation. We are 10 trade unionists, elected officials and lay activists. We represent 6 different trade unions: Unite, the General Workers' Union; Unison, that organises in local government and health workers; the Communication Workers Union, University and College Union, my own union, Community Union, and the National Union of Journalists. And in addition, Edinburgh Trade Union Council and the Hazards Movement. We've spent the last few days in Bhopal taking part in activities organised by the survivors movement. We've taken part in rallies and marches, we've taken part in torchlit processions, we've given addresses, we visited the new museum, People's Museum of Bhopal, the story of the disaster 30 years ago, told by the survivors, and also the 30 years of struggle that has gone on ever since. We've done many things, and my comrades here will tell you their experience of that. But one of the things that we were all completely united on before we left Scotland even was our support for the demands of the survivors movement. Demands that include adequate and accurate compensation on the basis of figures that accurately represent the number of people affected by the gas disaster. And we know that there has been a commitment by the government minister of the government of India, responsible for the gas disaster, for issues related to the gas disaster, a commitment to revise the figures that have been previously used. So we applaud that. It took a hunger strike, a hunger fast, a waterless hunger fast, to get the minister to pledge that. We would want to see that minister deliver on that pledge. We also support their demands for adequate health care and economic support. We support their demands for Dow to pay for the cleanup of the site, which is still highly contaminated with toxic materials, continuing to contaminate the water. On the basis of a polluter pays principle, Dow should pay for that cleanup to international standards. And finally, that Dow should be taken to court, the criminal courts, and should be awarded punitive damages. And it's only by Dow being awarded punitive damages that the message will be sent out that no multinational corporation, no domestic corporation should behave in the way that Union Carbide did, cutting corners, putting profit before the lives of people in India or anywhere in the world. Friends, the Scottish trade unions are glad to support these demands and will continue to lobby for these demands. Thank you.
Thanks. First of all, thank you so much basically for inviting us here in the first place. My name is Sam McCartney and I'm the chair of the Scottish International Committee in Unison, local government, health and voluntary sector. I'm here with two other colleagues, with Tony Cleary and Scott Donoghue. Tony, who is on the International Committee with myself, and Scott, who is the chair basically of our Health and Safety Committee, and with hazards, which Kathy will come on to at a further point. IRIG has made the point, obviously, that we've had quite a lot of communication in respect of what was happening and obviously what the events would be when we came to Bhopal, but nothing could compare for us, basically, for the welcome that we received, the warmness of the people, and the very fact that someone was interested, which shown quite clearly. When effectively we agreed and came out, obviously, from a unison perspective, and being the chair of the International Committee, we support many causes, we support many campaigns, and we try to be, as a trade union, as active as possible, because as I said to our colleagues earlier on, we are a family within the trade union. It's a worldwide family, and it's not just about the UK, it's about all trade unions over the world, and wherever they are being pursued, or wherever there's injustices, we should be playing a part. And obviously Bhopal was one of these. I met with two of the survivors at our conference in Liverpool a couple of years ago, and to be totally honest, we were of the impression that the families in Bhopal already had received the settlement. Because obviously the media, like the media in all countries, basically can sometimes be a little scarce with the truth, we didn't get the whole picture. We got the whole picture from the survivors, and on the basis of that, myself and other colleagues canvassed our union to support the principles in the process which IRIG has explained to you. And obviously the culmination of that is me sitting in front of you just now. When we came, as I said, when we came to Bhopal, we were aware of some of the facts. We weren't aware of all the facts, but we are going back to Scotland and to the STC with facts now that we will make sure are publicised, and will be publicised not just in Scotland, but through the international committee. We will get them out to our brothers and sisters across the world. IRIG touched upon the fact about corporate responsibility, and I said this obviously in Bhopal as well, was changing the name of your company does not give you license to escape the law or your responsibilities. I would go much further than saying Bhopal people deserve compensation. I would say quite clearly some of the executives in Dow need to taste prison food for a couple of years, because they have put the families who we met through so much. And again, I can't emphasise enough the welcome that we received, and it was an absolute pleasure and an honour to walk on the street with them, to carry torches in the torchlit demonstration, which was totally amazing for me. We would never get away with carrying lit torches in Scotland. They'd probably think we were trying to burn down the buildings. It was fantastic, but it was well worth doing, and I take my hat off to them. They have lived through so much and are still able to progress. We had an opportunity to meet some of these survivors, and obviously some of the women who have been fighting for justice for the last 30 years, and again, incredible. It makes me obviously very proud, because within my own trade union, Unison, females are the biggest majority and do play a very active part. And I think that's important. And I see a lot of men sitting in here, and I would say quite clearly, you need balance within your trade unions. You need everyone involved, from that side to this side. Nothing else matters. And finally, I would just like to say again, once again, is how touched I have been basically by people, and how welcome we have been made to feel. And we thank you deeply for that respect, and believe you me, we will not let the campaign die, and we will not effectively let others forget. And again, America, not just America, India and the government themselves have to put their hands up to their lack of support for the people there as well, because there was contamination before Union Carbide, because basically clean water is an important principle and a right that everyone should have. So they can play a part now by pursuing the American government. Instead of going to bed with them, they need to actually take them on and get justice for the people of Bhopal. Thanks very much.
Kathy Jenkins, please.
Thank you very much. It's an honour to be here, and I'm very pleased to be able to speak to you. I am wearing a number of different hats today. I'm a member of Unite the Union, which is a general workers' union. Another of our colleagues, Des Loughney, is also in Unite at national level. And I also represent the Scottish Hazards Campaign, which I'll tell you about in a minute. And the chair of our Scottish Hazards Campaign is here as well, Scott Donohoe. The Scottish Hazards Campaign is a campaign to improve health and safety, working conditions in Scotland and throughout the world. We're linked to campaigns across the UK, and we're also part of a European Work Hazards Network, which is a network of national activist campaigns throughout Europe. We're also part of trying to get off the ground a global grassroots occupational safety and health campaign, which would include ourselves, but also the Asian Network for the Rights of Environmental and Occupational Victims, groups working for justice in Latin America and in South Africa and across the world. So that's my background. I've been involved in campaigning around Bhopal for 6 or 7 years, but this is my first chance to come here. I've been delighted to come and meet a lot of the people that I've been exchanging emails with for years. So I was very involved in the Survivors Tour, which happened a couple of years ago. We campaign for better health and safety working conditions, but right alongside that, and as part of it, we have to campaign for stronger trade union rights, because the two go hand in hand. We know in Scotland anyway that a well-organised trade union organised workplace is 50% safer than a non-organised workplace. And that will be true throughout the world. So we very much see the two as being integral to each other. Although we can't compare conditions in any way in Europe to what you're facing here, we also are facing problems. There's strong pressure within Europe, across Europe, for deregulation, for free movement of labour without any restrictions on what the pay is, what the working conditions are. That hasn't come through yet, but there's a lot of pressure for it, for free trade, profit above people, and we are fighting our own battles about that, and understand that that fight has to be an international one. And part of that is very much a fight for working conditions and health and safety, because that is also under threat. In our press statement, we have identified some of the demands which we in Scotland are making of the Scottish Government, for example, for stronger regulation and enforcement on health and safety, for a toxic use reduction strategy, so that a strategy that would force industry to use less toxins and to control them better, for a good occupational health and safety service in Scotland, and also for stronger trade union rights and more enforcement of those rights. In Europe, we have had some international conferences and gatherings of representatives from all over the world, and the statement from the last one, which was a year ago, read, I won't read the whole statement, but I will read just one paragraph of it. It says, "We affirm that we will continue to develop solidarity with working people throughout the world to resist the transfer of risk from one country to another. Key campaigns will include asbestos, solvents, and the semiconductor industry, waste dumping, silica, benzene, and solidarity with Bhopal in the 30th anniversary year." So that was our general statement. I just wanted to use to say that we would like to emphasize practical solidarity between people in different countries, between trade unionists in different countries, not just statements of solidarity. And one example, which we were talking about this morning with some trade unionists from India, was the petrochemical industry. So we in Scotland have a very large petrochemical plant, which is built in a centre of population. And there have been some there have been some accidents, incidents, deaths, but there have also been a lot of near misses there. And that is a strongly organised trade union plant, but even there are problems. The union Unite, which organises the plant, INEOS, has actually taken part in solidarity actions through hazards and other people. For example, liaising with oil workers in Colombia. There's another example of oil workers in Norway who have taken solidarity action to support their fellow workers in parts of Africa and Latin America where the same companies are working. So we would like to really look for practical ways that we can work together for international solidarity. Bhopal has given us an example of what can go disastrously wrong, but it's also given us an amazing inspiration that people have fought for 30 years for better conditions, but also for compensation and for the rights of those people, for better health care, for clean water. And it's an inspiration to all of us to keep going and never give up. We had a meeting earlier with trade unionists from across India. We've been meeting people from Bhopal all through this week. We've exchanged names, emails, phone numbers, and we really want very much to keep in touch, to develop our links with people and look for those practical solutions. Thank you.
Also, स्कॉटलैंड से जो आए हैं और उन्होंने हमारे सामने बताया कि भोपाल में एक घटना होने के बाद आज का जो परिस्थिति है उसमें लोगों को अभी भी तकरीबन 30 साल के बावजूद 20 साल होने के बावजूद भी आज भी कंडीशन ख़राब है, पानी पीने के लायक नहीं है। ऐसा कंडीशन में जो लोग अभी भी जिंदा है उनको करने के बाद उनको मदद करने के लिए, सपोर्ट करने के लिए, कॉम्पनसेशन का डिमांड रखने के लिए क्या क्या कदम उठा सकता है, वो सवाल को लेकर इंडिया में आए हैं कि और उसके लिए हेल्थ एंड सेफ्टी है, लोगों का जो हेल्थ के बारे में ध्यान देना चाहिए, उस पर कानून होना चाहिए, कानून के इम्प्लीमेंटेशन होना चाहिए। ये सवाल यूरोप में है, हिंदुस्तान के अंदर भी तो उसके बारे में मशहूर होगा। संघर्ष में हमारा इंटरनेशनल सॉलिडारिटी होना जरूरी है। ये सवाल लेकर हमारे साथ इन्होंने आए हैं, आपके सामने इन्होंने पेश किया, और किसी को कोई सवाल वगैरह पूछेगा तो आपके लिए आपके सामने मौका है। Anybody wants any clarification, any points?
भोपाल में ऐसी क्या परिस्थिति है कि आम आदमी को वहाँ पर आना पड़ रहा है, और इसके अंदर केंद्र सरकार का क्या रोल है, इसके बारे में थोड़ा जानकारी दें।
ये सवाल जो लोग भोपाल में जाके आए हैं तो
As I understand it, your question concerns the conditions of the Bhopal survivors and whether the Indian government, why the Indian government is not doing anything or not doing enough. Conditions for the Bhopali people we've witnessed, they remain very poor. It's not unusual in India, but they also remain sick. They are suffering from a wide range of complex conditions of which we know very little. Some research is currently being done, but a lot of people, thousands of people, remain sick from the toxins either that they inhaled on the 3rd of December 1984, or that their mother inhaled or grandmother inhaled on that day, all from drinking the water that's been contaminated since even before the gas. So the condition remains difficult, the condition remains very bad, and for some people they are unable to work, and therefore their situation of poverty is made even worse. As for why the Indian government is not doing enough, why it is that it took a hunger fast to actually get the minister responsible for issues related to the disaster to commit to changing the figures, I would speculate with some degree of truth that the Indian government is more interested in attracting capital, multinational corporations, into India. And in order to do that, as we've heard from our trade union comrades in Mumbai, in order to do that, Mr. Modi requires there to be poor labor rights, poor trade union rights, poor safety protection, poor environmental protection. In short, very few constraints on the movement of capital into India. That's what the agenda of the Indian government is. Now, if the Indian government was to pursue Dow vigorously and send a message that corporations will not be permitted to behave in the way that Union Carbide did, and that now inherited by Dow, that might frighten off some inward investment, and that's the last thing that Mr. Modi wants to do. So that would be my speculation. I think it's an accurate one, that the Indian government is more interested in making India safe for corporations to make profit in than it is in making India safe for its working class people.
Anybody else?
How will you continue your association with the Bhopal victims in the future? Now that you have seen it, this is the present, but what do you plan to do in the future?
We're actually going to have a meeting tonight of the 10 of us to try to decide exactly how we want to take this forward. But just a few things, and then my colleagues can add to them. We are planning to go back and to put together presentations of photographs that we've taken, of videos, of the words that people have said to us, of our words, and to go out to trade union branches, to community groups, and to spread the word really about Bhopal, to raise awareness, to ask people to make representation to Dow Chemical, to ask people to raise money for the victims in Bhopal. So that is certainly some of what we want to do. We will also obviously continue the work that we've already been doing with the Bhopal Medical Appeal and the Scottish Friends of Bhopal, which have been going for quite a number of years.
My name is Des Lockney. I'm a member of Unite Union in UK, and we organise in the petrochemicals industry, and I'm involved in Unite at a national level. So what I plan to do when I get back to the UK is to talk to my colleagues in the petrochemical sector, the national officers. I'm going to suggest to them that they send a delegation to India and Bhopal to do what we discussed this morning, to set up links between petrochemical workers in plants like Union Carbide, like the one in Bhopal, in order to coordinate and learn from each other on health and safety matters. And I think that would be a big step forward in fighting multinational corporations like Dow and getting them brought to justice.
Hi. From a unionist perspective, we have over 80,000 members in Scotland, and obviously what we've been involved in and what Scott, Tony and myself will be doing when we go back is we will be taking the message back to our branches, to those members, to their families, to seek further support. But we're also, as a public service union, part of Public Service International, which is a European conglomerate of trade unions, where effectively we can input information in Europe, so we can make them aware. Because obviously, this is not an isolated incident. The incident of Bhopal basically is happening, and has happened in India. These people are still there. As I said, the devil is still in the bedroom. So they're still there. We need to make countries aware that companies like Dow and others, like Ineos, for instance, who we've got in Scotland, will continue to look for easy targets where there is no trade union rights, where effectively the government is happy to turn a blind eye, and therefore they can exploit them. What we can do from a unionist perspective is to spread the word on that, but also there's an important incident, and the important issue is we need to continue to have funds for the units that are operating, because this is not going away. Kids are still being born. We had a visit to Sangarsh unit as well, where kids are still basically getting treatment with learning disability caused by pollution. We still need to make funds available, help them basically to continue and to grow, to deal with these issues. But ultimately, it's about getting the message out, not just in Scotland, but worldwide.
साल बीत जाने के बाद भी अभी तक प्रॉब्लम बनी हुई, इसका कारण क्या है?
The answer to this question could be quite similar to my answer to the last one about why the government is not doing enough, but it's also Dow Chemical, the American multinational corporation, which now wholly owns Union Carbide, refuses to accept any liability for Bhopal. They argue that they absorbed the assets of Union Carbide, but none of the liabilities. We say that that is nonsense. Any corporation that takes over another corporation must inherit the liabilities as well. But Dow is a very powerful, very large multinational corporation. It has used every trick in the book to try and avoid coming to justice, to appearing in court, using the corporate veil, hiding behind complex company structures. And it has friends in high places. It has friends in the United States. There has been a warrant for the extradition of Warren Anderson, the CEO of Union Carbide in 1984, for many, many years. It was never honored by the United States government, and Mr. Anderson died earlier this year, so he could not face justice. So to have such a powerful multinational corporation with friends of the most powerful government in the world and friends in the Indian government, I think that gives it an explanation for why 30 years on they still haven't achieved full justice.
I just wanted to add to that you may be aware, there was a big campaign about it, and you probably are aware that Dow Chemical was one of the main sponsors of the Olympic Games in London. Now, there was a campaign against that, which didn't succeed because Dow is still a sponsor of the Olympics for the next 2 lots, I think. However, there was a big campaign. It did raise quite a lot of awareness, and we did campaign very hard for Dow not to be a sponsor of the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow. Now, whether it was because of the campaign, but I think we did at least help influence the fact that Dow was not a sponsor of the Commonwealth Games. So Dow is very powerful all over the world. They're really trying to build up their social responsibility. You know, they are selling themselves as a socially responsible company, and what we have to do is constantly say, no, you're not, no, you're not, no, you're not, and you won't ever be until you clean up Bhopal.
We don't take a lead in a campaign for justice for Bhopal. The Bhopal survivors take the lead in that, and we act in solidarity with them. So we will respond to demands that they ask us to do for international solidarity. We are not Indian. In terms of pressure on the Indian government, primarily that should come from Indian people, primarily that should be led by the people most directly affected. But when they ask for international solidarity, when they ask for international pressure, for example, when Narendra Modi will come to the United Kingdom in February, we will make sure that from our point of view, he is not welcome so long as he doesn't deal with the problem of Bhopal. But we will take the lead from the survivors.
Can you share with us some campaigns can you share with us your experience of any campaign, any international campaign that, other than Bhopal, of workers of different countries coordinating with each other in order to get to keep each other safe, you know, to see that safety conditions are observed, or in supporting workers of the West, supporting people in Asia of the same company struggling for certain rights in their respective country that you may have?
Thanks. I mean, as I said at the very start, I'm speaking on behalf of the Unison, but there's another 9 trade unions here who are all involved in international issues, and various campaigns will be dealt with by various trade unions. At this point in time, from a Unison perspective, and I can say actually from an STUC perspective, Palestine obviously is one of the issues that's affecting us quite greatly at the moment, and also what's continuing to happen there. Also, we see in Colombia, we're watching with interest the discussions that are happening there just now, because, as you probably are aware, the Colombian government is a puppet of the American regime, and you know that is what's happening there. In Venezuela, we have the same. We have orchestrated demonstrations supported by the Americans as well, again undermining workers' rights. We've had delegations from a Unison perspective have gone out there. We've had delegations go out and bring reports back. Again, as I said, it is about the media. We have good journalists. Our friend Rob is one of the socially oriented journalists, but we've got a lot of journalists out there who are in the pocket of the man, who will write, like puppets, what governments ask them to write. When we have people on the ground, and what we achieve from going to Bhopal is to bring back the truth, then to make sure that others know about the truth. Within the European markets, Kathy made reference to Dow during the Commonwealth Games. My trade union, we wrote to the politicians in Glasgow. That's where we're based. And I would like to hope that that was one of the reasons that they weren't included. But there was other companies who are involved, some of them involved in Palestine, some of them involved in other areas basically of strife. They're like locusts, these people. They tend to descend in areas where there is strife. But One of the ones obviously you'll be aware of is also behind the label on the back of the disaster that happened in Bangladesh. War on Want and other campaigns and NGOs which we're involved with are now actively pursuing companies in Britain who sell cheap clothes. We need to target these groups like Sainsbury's and other companies like that, like Walmart, who exploit not just basically people in Britain, but exploit the workers who work for them and pay them crap wages and do not recognise their rights. That then has the impact in Bangladesh and others. We've been able to get some assurances from some companies basically who now sell products produced in Bangladesh that they will put health and safety perspectives in place, that they will sign up to a charter that shows that they are paying heed to the health and safety regulations. The problem you have though is, if there's no health and safety regulations within that country, in the first instance, it is then very difficult to tie these companies down to achieving that. That's where the trade unions come into this perspective. It's why we support campaigns, and as Eric quite rightly pointed out, we don't drive. The people who drive the campaigns are the people who are affected. Behind the label, the issue of Bangladesh, the people who push that and drive that is trade unions who are now involved. People who actually are working in these conditions. We obviously hope to be their mouthpiece in Europe and in Scotland, and hopefully we can achieve something by doing that.
I think the example given by my colleague really is a good example, because unions all over the UK and in Scotland coordinated activity on behalf to do something about the disaster in Bangladesh. In Edinburgh, we picketed the shops of the companies that wouldn't sign up to a protocol for people, for goods they ordered from Bangladesh to be made in a safe environment. We picketed shops about that. My own union and Edinburgh Trade Union Council, we wrote to all our elected representatives saying they should put pressure through the Scottish Parliament and through the UK Parliament to make all the companies who have stuff made in Bangladesh observe a health and safety code. And yours an example of something that worked. As far as I know, that has improved conditions significantly in Bangladesh. That's the information we've got, so that was something that worked.
Just very quickly, because I know there's other questions. The other example I would give you is the semiconductor industry, which is making obviously electronic components. And there's very, very major issues with the use of solvents in semiconductor industry that lead to cancers, to birth defects, etc. There is a worldwide campaign from the semiconductor industry in the US, in Asia, in the UK, and very, very strong network of people exchanging information and experience and going to visit each other and using that knowledge to support each other. So I think that is, and if you want to know more about that, there's a lot on the web about it, but that's a good example, I think, of, we haven't won it, but where changes have been brought about because of that.
Another brief example from India. The workers who were poisoned by mercury in Kodaikanal in Tamil Nadu by Hindustan Lever, part of Unilever, which is partly a British-owned company. My own union has voted to put pressure on the Leverhulme Foundation, which actually puts funds into university teachers to pressurize Unilever to pay compensation to those workers.
It's good to see solidarity happening here in real terms, all of you coming here. Well, I think as trade unionists, isn't it time that we saw our campaigns step up in terms of not just one Dow and not one Union Carbide and not one Apple and not one Walmart, but that the entire system, whether it's in the US or in the UK or in India, how the ports, the laws are all sheltering the capitalists, the imperialists all over the world, and it's the people of the world that are suffering at their hands all over. I know it's a rhetoric, but it's affecting its beginning of.
I absolutely agree, and I don't know, do people here know about the TTIP? Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. It's just one of a number of examples. There's also a CETA, which is a Canadian one. This is an international agreement which is being drawn up between the United States and the European Union, which would allow, which is really to make free trade much easier for multinationals between these countries. And it's very frightening, actually, because it basically gives multinational corporations more power than nation states in many ways. But the heartening thing is that there is a huge campaign now against it, certainly in Europe, and I think there's quite a campaign against it in the United States. But certainly in Europe there is a massive campaign against it, and it has slowed it down already. They're having to reassess what they're going to do. And so it's not a success, but we're hoping it might be. But I absolutely agree, it's that kind of thing. And there are these kinds of treaties between the US and parts of Asia, between various parts of the world and Australia. So we really have to get in there and stop them.
Yes, you're right, colleague, and obviously we totally agree with you. The other example is obviously what's happening in the Ukraine just now. That is also part of it. This is not about democratic rights. This is about who's got fuel rights, who's effectively going to control what areas and what part. Just an example of what my colleague was talking about with TTIP is the Australian government has just actually had to pay $60 billion to Imperial Tobacco for removing the health warnings on their packets because it was affecting the profit margin. I think that speaks volumes itself in terms of what the intention is. It's not an agreement that's going to benefit the poor. It's certainly not an agreement that's going to benefit the working class. But there is a movement now that the reality is happening. We have to be observant. They aren't going to tell us when they're doing things like this. Capitalists don't work that way. We have to be more astute and be aware that it's happening.
Is there any possibility of having a boycott movement internationally and including India, like Nestle? We did it for milk powder. Is it possible that we boycott the manufacture, the things that they produce, the Dow chemical? And if it is international, then Indian activists would willingly join it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, basically. And again, I would like to say we could do it right away. It's very, very difficult to coordinate. For instance, when I mentioned Palestine, the STUC and the Irish Confederation of Trade Unions, which I'm Irish myself, were the first ones who put forward the boycott disinvestment in place in terms of Israel at this point in time. Now that's difficult, and it's difficult to achieve. What you need to do, though, is to find out how this will impact on people on the ground. It's back to we can help and we can coordinate, but we need to find out what the impact would be in various countries. If it's going to impact and make the poor in India more poor, we really need to take cognizance of that. Before we put the boycott disinvestment in place in Palestine, we already had met with the Palestinian trade unions, we'd met with community groups, and they encouraged us to put this in place. That is the process you would need to do, but yes, good idea.
Just briefly add, I completely agree. One of the problems is that Dow tends to produce components of more complex products, so it's more difficult for consumers to boycott. But the people who can boycott are the workers who are in that process. So trade unions are in a very strong position to boycott Dow. But the other thing that Dow particularly relies on is its name, which is why it sponsors the Olympics, why it sponsors corporate social responsibility type activities, and that is very much vulnerable to a kind of boycott or exposure. Next year, Dow is planning to report on what it's called its sustainability goals, and it has written up these sustainability goals to make itself look glorious, make it look as if a sustainable world is not possible without Dow chemicals running it. And that's a great opportunity to blow a hole in it, because it's absolute nonsense.
I think Comrades, we will conclude this press meet. We are very happy that comrades have come from Scotland to express solidarity with the surviving people of Bhopal, and also to continue the campaign for the survivors, seeking compensation, justice, and also to establish international working class solidarity, and to take the fight of the workers throughout the world for genuine trade union rights, labor rights, and also justice. So I think they have been doing it for the last so many years, and they have had the first-hand experience, not only now, many years ago, and carrying this struggle forward for so many years, 3 decades in Scotland, in different parts of the world. That's not easy. And also appreciating the conditions in Bhopal, the survivors of Bhopal, and especially in the days to come. The situation is becoming more difficult, because we now see not the government doing the governance, it is the corporate governance that is taking place. The corporates are going to rule the world and rule the countries, and because of the corporate governance, we are going to face more and more accidents, more and more unsafe conditions, more and more difficulties. And the present government is inviting capital to come to India to make products in this country, and giving them freedom. And also every day that we are witnessing more and more erosion of the existing labor rights in this country, which is a phenomenon in all parts of the world. So therefore it becomes necessary, and it is absolutely essential for the international solidarity, working union solidarity, to remain together and face the offensive of the capital, and to have a world free of oppression and exploitation. Thank you very much.